The Connor Stalions sign stealing scandal won't go away for Michigan. Sherrone Moore looks like he's going to be suspended for the first 2 games of the 2025 season. The Connor Stalions story, and this is going to be What the H, brought to you by Double D Piping. The Connor Stalions story has reignited a conspiracy theory about Tennessee, Jimmy, which is that South Carolina being dead in the water in 2022, about to miss a bowl game, goes and shocks 2 college football playoff contending teams in back-to-back weeks in Tennessee and Clemson that had been scouted by Connor Stalions a month earlier. How much validity do you give to that conspiracy theory?
Not much at all. I
Not
don't.
much at all.
No. By the way, Moore, it's been announced, and I love this. He's going to be suspended for games 3 and 4. So he gets to coach in the first game, and the second game is against Oklahoma. So they want him coaching against Oklahoma, and then he has to sit out games 3 and 4, one of which includes like New Mexico State and Nebraska. So that gives you an idea of what Michigan thinks of Nebraska, right?
That is true. They have absolutely no respect for Nebraska whatsoever.
So I don't know that I think that South Carolina gleaned all this scouting information, and that's why. What did they score? 60? Was it 63-28? 38 against Tennessee. Something
it was
crazy
63
like
to 28. It was 38, 63 to 38. You're right.
Yeah. So I don't put a lot of stock in. Well, it's because that scouting report, they got 63 points. For whatever reason, Rattler was brilliant in that game. I put that more into, for whatever reason, under Heupel, they have a game that's inexplicable. Whether it was losing last year at Arkansas, whether it was losing to South Carolina, whether it was going to Missouri a couple of years ago and getting your butt kicked, that was like 33-7. They just seem to have one of those games. So I put more stock into it. Now, here's the other thing that I've heard mixed reports on. Jeremy Banks got suspended for that game. He didn't play. Now, is he worth 63 points? No. But from what I was told, Jeremy Banks told somebody I know that on Monday, he got suspended for missing practice. But the team was not told that Banks wasn't going to play in that game until they boarded the bus on Friday. And they're like, what? So it kind of hit them cold that he wasn't going to be there. And I've heard that, I don't know that it's true, but I've heard that some of the players kind of revolted about Jeremy Banks because he was the leader of that defense. I would say Banks not being there probably had as much to do with the scouting issue as anything. But I think it's overblown. I don't think cheating and scouting like that makes that big of a difference.
Okay, so let me just play devil's advocate.
I think you do.
No, okay. Look, I'll say this. As somebody who is a U.S. history major, I enjoy myself studying a lot of government conspiracies, throughout history. My rule with conspiracies is that you got to show me more than a motive, and you got to show me more than a series of coincidences. I need to see something hard. Just for example, like I'm open to a JFK conspiracy theory, but even though there are suspicious circumstances surrounding it, no one has given me any evidence that anybody other than Lee Harvey Oswald actually pulled the trigger and shot him to this point.
I'm 100% on the same page with you on that one. It's been 60-something years, right?
Right.
And nobody's come forward.
So, yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So I understand the hesitancy, but it wasn't just the Tennessee game that year. It was they beat Tennessee and then they beat Clemson in back-to-back weeks, scoring 63 and 31 points. 2 teams who they eliminated from the playoff, who were scouted by Michigan a month earlier. And this was right after they had only scored 6 points at Florida. Most notably, the next year in 2023 with Spencer Rattler, who had those strong 2 weeks, they go 5-7 and the offense sputters again. So maybe the Jeremy Banks situation could be why they scored 6. Maybe it is why Tennessee would have given up a lot of points, maybe 35, 40 in that game. But, South Carolina had 10 legitimate offensive possessions in that game, and they scored touchdowns on 9 of them, which I've never heard. And then they go to Clemson and beat them a week later. That again, no hard evidence outside of Connor Stalions scouting Tennessee and Clemson the month before. And Ollie Lane told us that South Carolina's their offense was wearing armbands in that game, which they had never worn before. I got to say, doesn't it doesn't the Clemson game and then the way they played the next year with Spencer Rattler add a little bit of fuel to the fire?
Well, let me ask you this, and I didn't know about the armbands. Did they wear armbands against Clemson?
That is something I need to look up. You're right. This
That
is why
could add to the conspiracy theory.
you're right.
Now, or is it possible that Shane Beamer is just a really good coach late in the season?
I mean, that is true because the same thing happened this past year.
Right, with Sellers at quarterback, I think they won their last 6. They were one of the 3 best teams probably in the SEC in the last half of the year, or at least the last 6 or so games. I mean, they played lights out, and they also had a couple of tough losses before that. I think one of them was at LSU or Alabama, but they really came on and played well. And by the way, Sellers was a whole lot better than I ever envisioned that he would be. But I do think Rattler got hot at that particular time. Why, I don't know. I do remember asking, you'll get a kick out of this, I think, but I'm at the SEC spring meetings, and I asked Shane Beamer about all of a sudden it clicking in for Rattler against Tennessee, Clemson, and then they also scored a lot of points against Notre Dame in a bowl game, right?
They did.
So I asked him about it clicking in for him, and he said, no. He said he played well the whole year. Well, that's a bunch of bull. Rattler had like 9 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions entering the Tennessee game. I'm not going to say he stunk, but he was among the lower tier of quarterback producers in the SEC until that moment. So he didn't play like that the whole year. So anyway, I don't put a lot of stock into it. Maybe I need a little more evidence. The armband kind of makes me wonder a little bit because I didn't know that part of the equation.
Yes. This is again, this is something we heard from Ollie Lane about the armbands. Now, to your point with Lenora Sellers, it's funny because it actually I don't know where you stand on college football playoff selections. Do you go based on the whole body of work no matter when you played, or do you think you give credence to how teams finish the season? Because I think there's an argument that if you go based on who's finishing stronger or hot at the right time, you could have made a case that South Carolina should have been in the playoff over SMU last year. And the other three.
So here's the way I look at that. I do consider the entirety of the season. If I think it's a coin flip between, let's say, South Carolina and Ole Miss, I'm taking South Carolina because they won their last 6 and they were hot and they were playing better. And Ole Miss went on the road and laid an egg at Florida. Okay. So, which could have been in certain terms like a playoff game. I would take South Carolina in that situation over Ole Miss. But I do have to look at the whole season. But again, if I think 2 teams are pretty much on a level basis, I'm taking the hotter team.
What the H brought to you guys by Double D Piping. We're going to wrap this up in 1 second. First, a quick message from Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
So the takeaway from this segment is Jimmy Hyams thinks Shane Beamer is going to be on the Mount Rushmore of SEC coaches in the near future. I'm just kidding, Jimmy.
If you only count the last 5 or 6 games.
So, okay, is Shane Beamer the new?
I wouldn't put him there even with that. I'm just kidding.
Is Shane Beamer the new?
We got somebody that sent a text that said there were emails proving that South Carolina had the scouting reports from Michigan. I don't know about those emails. Do you?
I don't know about those emails either. I've never heard about those emails. Yeah, I don't really believe that's the case. But I will say this: Shane Beamer's November run is more impressive than. Do you remember when? Rest in peace. I think he was a great guy. But when Johnny Majors used to brag about how great he was in November, and I thought, well, yeah, but look at who you're playing in November every year at Tennessee.
He didn't bring that up. They remember what you do in November. Yeah, they remember that you beat a bad Vanderbilt team and a bad Kentucky team and typically a bad Ole Miss team. Yeah, his schedule was not difficult in November. So, yeah, he was he did have a great November record for a long time.
He did. He did. It was one last thing. It reminds me of. Do you remember Derek Dooley when he switched from Matt Sims to Tyler Bray in 2010, and he said, we switched to Tyler Bray and we turned around the season from 2-6 to 6-6. I'm like, you turned it around because you played Memphis, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky.
I also remember when he lost to Kentucky, he said that wasn't a big game.
Oh yeah, and then he went dark for a month, didn't he?
Yeah. I think 37 days he could not be found. Because I think you realize the, shall we call it the stupidity of that comment?
Yeah, that's very true.